Yes, sir. It is finally officially here. The New York Football Giants, the NFL at large, the 2024 draft, breaking down the coverage and working our way toward the sixth overall pick. What will Big Blue do? Will it be wide receiver? Will it be quarterback? Will it be a trade up, a trade down? All coming next right here on OGP. Yes, sir. It's OGP, the One Giant Podcast, live on draft night from a different looking setting here, still inside the same space, the old studio apartment, but coming to you live on YouTube, waiting for the official start, kicking off here in a few minutes. So we're early. We're about 10 minutes ahead of schedule, so no big deal there. We figured we'd go ahead and just get the ball rolling. Actually, a little bit less than that, 6.5 as we have it on in the background. Just going to talk about where are the Giants going, what looks most likely here for them. We talk about the upcoming pick and whether or not anything surprising is going to happen. The general consensus here, from what we've seen so far, at least heading in towards this draft, is that the New York Football Giants are going to have a really hard time making their way up the board. And if you're coming in, as people start to get in the rooms, I start to smash the proverbial base here for myself. We'll reiterate this as the draft gets underway, as pick one starts to roll. So really just wanted to get the ground running here, reminding everybody, get us over on Twitter at Adam Armbrecht, at Andy Mac, AMAC214, excuse me, for Andy. And then obviously One Giant Podcast as well. As everybody starts to come in, we welcome you into the room. We say we're just getting things going a little bit early, had ourselves set for an 8 p.m. start, but figured let's kick it off. Let's have the conversation and let's start to set the table. We'll reiterate it as we get underway. Top three picks, we already know Caleb Williams, all but assured to be going number one to Chicago. Looks like in spite of his best attempts, it's going to be Aiden Daniels going to Washington at 2. Then we're going to talk about 3 here, obviously. When we think about the New England Patriots and the speculation around it, we talked about our lot this morning, Andy and I, where all of a sudden this rumor bubbles up, right? Could it be that we're going to have an opportunity for the New York Football Giants to trade off any team? Could be the Vikings, could be talking about the Broncos, somebody getting up there to that 3rd overall pick because the Patriots are willing to move out of it. It flips, as we're hearing from a little bit of coverage live on the draft about the New York Football Giants right now. Then all of a sudden it flips and it says, well, New England really likes Drake Maye. They're more than happy to be there as we welcome in BJ Reddy. Thank you for being a part of it, man. All of a sudden they say, yeah, we're going to stay. We're totally fine. We talked about this morning if you joined us for our live. So now it goes right back to, feels like, okay, now let's go right back to where we were, where the opportunity to trade up for a quarterback, or specifically one of those, that 3rd ranked quarterback that we see on the board here, because there's clearly been this divide amongst the Giants fan base. And whether it's because perceptually JJ McCarthy came into this draft and was perceived to be a quarterback that is closer to the Michael Penix Jr., to the Bo Nix stratosphere of prospects, as opposed to those top 3 quarterbacks. Why then are we here? Why are we listening to the ideas that JJ McCarthy could be worth a 4th overall pick? There's also been the connections to the New England Patriots and obviously to Michigan and to Tom Brady, and whether or not they maybe were trying to find a way to drop themselves down that draft board, give themselves an opportunity to get additional assets, and still end up getting the quarterback that they like. I heard this coverage leading up to the draft here about how the idea, if you are one of these organizations and you're thinking we need to go up and get Drake Maye, we need Drake Maye, we want to get him. The Giants are one of those teams potentially, right? You spend all this energy trying to get up the board. Meanwhile, the team that you're trading with, the New England Patriots, is saying, think about it, guys. We could trade down a few spots and still get the quarterback that we prefer. So if there's any wrinkle to be had here, would you say if the New England Patriots were doing that as a smokescreen to try to get cap while still landing JJ McCarthy, would they go JJ straight up at 3? That seems unlikely as well. So as it stands right now, the Giants are going to be in a hard spot. Odds on, it's Malik. Nabers looks like it's going to be the pick as it stands right now. You've heard Andy and I tell you, we really like Odunze. We think that he's a great complementary fit. Let's be clear. If you get any one of, as we said all along, any one of those 3 wide receivers in that group, even though we don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be available for the Giants, you get any one of those picks, any one of those 3 wide receivers, and you feel like you've gotten an excellent piece to add into your team. So It's nothing about saying we won't like player X or Y, specifically the wide receivers, just preference. And we'd love to see Rome Odunze be the pick for Big Blue. If they go Nabers, electric talent, obviously going to be excited to get him into the fold. I don't know if we're talking about the possibility of the Giants going straight JJ McCarthy at 6. We've heard it. We've seen the interview with Rich Eisen. JJ McCarthy says, yeah, I have connections there to the coaching staff, to Dable, to the QB coach, the offensive coordinator. Feels like it'd be a seamless transition for me. Is that too transparent? Is that too obvious from JJ McCarthy? Yeah, it's a really good fit. And we're excited about just waiting for the 6th pick to come and for me to be a New York Giant. When you look over that big board, I'll bring it up in the background here, just in terms of where the prospect rank overall. Obviously, we're going to have some opportunities to debate it. But one of the things, too, just to remember is that we are talking about when it comes to specifically the NFL draft into the QB position. Well, that's the way it works. You pay a premium for the talent that you want to get. Now, when we reflect back and we think about which players end up being worth that capital you want to get, which player, if you're lucky enough to have been Chicago, who made the trade with Carolina and now has the number 1 overall pick, you don't have to debate about how much is it worth it to go get our guy. Well, guess what? You're going to sit there, you're going to get your guy, and you're not going to have to worry about it. So as we're a minute away counting down from the official start of the NFL draft, some teams don't have to worry about that, right? The New England Patriots technically don't have to worry about that. The question will become if they stay there and take Drake Maye, the team that maybe sits, if it's the Giants and took JJ McCarthy, you'll compare those two quarterbacks as they go forward. That's the nature of it. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds here as we move forward. But we talk about the big board, talk about the way all these players rank. Nothing could also be more identifying in terms of what goes on here than the fact that when you go to, and it depends on where you go, NFL.com, if you want to go by prospect grade, you have every single one of the wide receivers be up there. It goes, I believe, Nabers, Harrison Jr., and then Rome Odunze as the clear cut, right? So when we think about looking inside of this, the best players available, we'll go ahead and talk about over on ESPN.com. Their draft coverage: Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, Joe Alt, Jaden Daniels is your fifth best. Drake Maye would be the 6th best prospect in this draft by their standards. How about Dallas Turner? He's not a guy, you may not hear his name until you're coming out of the top 10 here pick. So somebody's going to get a great defensive talent as well. Rome Odunze is 8th. JJ McCarthy is now 9th. So if you go by prospect grades over on NFL.com, you're going to be talking about getting back in towards the back end of the first round in terms of a prospect. But if you talk about where ESPN has them or where you believe they're going to be going from a draft stock perspective, you're going to see guys rise there a little bit. So to me, it's just fascinating. JJ McCarthy represents that rising talent, or at least perceived to be rising talent on draft night, and everyone is trying to figure out whether or not it's justified. And why Michael Penix a part of that either? Is it just the injury history that holds him out? Why isn't Bo Nix a part of that? Is the age a big factor? We talked about this morning how you go look at the age of quarterbacks coming out. That list is ugly in terms of success. It's littered with a lot of guys that come into the league at 23, 24 years old and never quite get there. Now, a big part of that is just that when you get drafted to bad teams and you have bad talent around you, you don't have success. And that can really tell everything there is to tell, right? Was Zach Wilson always destined to be a bust? Maybe. But you certainly wouldn't have felt confident when he gets drafted by the New York Jets that they were going to be the franchise that figured it out the right way. Likewise, you can say for Daniel Jones. I don't know what ultimately his career is going to be. The injuries have played a massive factor in that. But when you go and draft him at 6, going back a number of years now, and then you look around the roster, whether or not he's never going to be an elite top 10 quarterback position, doesn't look likely. But when you look around that roster and say, and he never had a number 1 receiver. Now, he had an elite weapon in Saquon Barkley. He had his own injury history as well. But all those things compile, right? To me, you look at all of those factors and you have to start to say, well, there's a lot more going on here than just the way the QB looks, how he plays, and what he's as a prospect. But typically, the best QBs, the guys that are going to be Pro Bowlers, the guys that are going to be future Hall of Famers, you know it instantly. You go back and you look at the Houston Texans a year ago and you go, oh, that's what it looks like when the talent is electric. You know it's going to be your franchise guy. Unlike in Carolina, where you ask multiple questions. Well, is it the player? Is it the team, organization? Is it the talent? And what do we do to try to correct? So A lot of questions to be asked there as the draft is officially underway. We'll wait for that first announcement. We expect it to be Caleb Williams, and then we'll start to work our way down the board. Oh, as I get a little adjustment there. Thinking about also, we're going to do this tomorrow morning, probably another live. So if you want to join us for another great session, we had a lot of fun this spring with and had a great group of people come in for it. So if you join us tomorrow morning, we're going to be talking about, well, coming out of this first round now, based on what the Giants do, what's for them? How are they going to address their areas of need? If they end up making a dramatic trade up here and it costs them the 47th pick as well, or the 70th or something future, if it's next year's draft class, we won't worry as much. If it's this year's draft class, though, we're going to talk about, well, what did we lose out on here? If they end up going JJ McCarthy, how do they address that area of need when we talk about wide receiver? There's a lot of different ways that we can look at it. And one of the reasons why we might stick around here when it comes to the Giants' 6th overall pick, we'll take a step away, have a breather after they make their selection. Expectations, by the way, something around 9 p.m. seems to be. Dan Duggan over on X had that earlier today where, hey, could possibly something in that range. Hey, Tommy, man, welcome into the fold. I haven't seen you in a little bit in here. I'm sure you've been in watching, but sometimes when people pop up, and we haven't been doing lives as much. Good to see you back in the room. Obviously, we'll go ahead and give that official shout out to BJ Reddy coming in here early and often. So we didn't get the chance to talk about what that impact would be. And the reason why I said we'll probably stick around here for a bit as the draft in the first round unfolds tonight, there is this world. So let's say that the Giants stay at 6 and they take JJ McCarthy. Like, put aside whether or not you think he's the perfect player, whether or not you would do that. If you take JJ McCarthy at 6, well, now the next conversation you're going to have, or at least I think we should have, is how do the Giants go and get that weapon? Now, it's deep wide receiver class, so you don't need to make any type of panic moves here. But when we think into that second round, when we start to talk back to the 47th pick overall, let's move up the board from there. There's going to be some guys in behind it here. But coming up from the top 50 here over on ESPN, we know we can do this a lot of different ways, right? But Keon Coleman, 37th overall, he's been starting to get a little bit more buzz. We talked about him a little bit leading up to the draft as well. You're also going to talk about Ricky Pearsall. He's going to be there out of Florida. You're going to talk about Xavier Worthy, 34th overall on the board. Is that worthy of the Giants making, pun intended, a margin move up there at the top of the second round to get him? Or is there a world where you'd say, well, I want Mitchell from Texas. I want him. He's the 29th ranked player on the board right now. If he's there as you're getting to 27, 28, 29, can I move up into the first round, get that 5th year of control on a first round rookie wide receiver and pair him with the quarterback that I've taken at 6 overall, right? So I think that could play a big factor here when we think about the New York Giants, especially if we talk about overall. So I mentioned there are guys coming up the board within the top 50 when we're looking at opportunities for the Giants to make a move here. Someone else, man, I apologize. We had a fan who said, what about Polk out of Washington, taking a look at his game? I do like the way he plays. He's actually right there behind Coleman when we talk about the 60th overall, though. So the drop-off in wide receiver is from 37th, Keon Coleman, which is right there at the top of the second round, maybe available, 6'3", 213, big-bodied guy. Kind of, you could start to say, if we had our mold of player wanting Odunze, that'd be in the same mold. And then you can flip over to Odunze's teammate, right, 6'1", 203, Jalen Polk. But that's 60th overall. So then you get into now McMillan is going to be there potentially also out of Washington, back-to-back there, 66th overall wide receiver position. Troy Franklin, Oregon, right, coming out. He's there at 73rd overall. So point being here is the Giants, if they were to go quarterback, are going to have to make a quick and aggressive decision potentially about how they want to address the wide receiver room. The other factor inside of this, and Tommy, I'll come for you there when you talk about what you're looking at in terms of the draft. The other big factor here would be, excuse me, if you're the Giants and you flip it the other way and you get your wide receiver, how does it impact? Maybe that could be chart. You could be coming back in for a quarterback as well. And let's be honest, right? The more realistic might be that they go with Odunze or they go with Malik Nabers, odds on favorite right now for the Giants. It's 6. And then they turn around and say, well, how do we come back in and get Michael Penix, or how do we come back in and get a Bo Nix at the end of the first round? So all those things could be factors here. We're getting a little bit of traction where it seems like Penix is actually getting up towards that top 15 kind of status, pushing towards the top 10. Don't know if Nix is going to get that same kind of buzz, but you're at least hearing now maybe a 5th quarterback could get into the fray there. Let's talk about Tommy. Got into the room here. Pray we land alt Daniels, Maye, JJ, Nabers, Harrison, or trade back to load up on the team. Yeah, by the way, and I see that their names are in there. You'll all run them off. But yeah, essentially, like, well, you're gonna get Alt, Daniels, Maye, JJ, Nabers, or Harris. Like, you're gonna get. This is what we said all the time. Andy broke it down perfectly. Hey, there are 6 players, 3 quarterbacks, 3 wide receivers at the top of this draft. You are guaranteed by doing absolutely nothing to get one of those 6 players. Now, you're not getting Caleb Williams and you're not getting Jaden Daniels, but you're going to get one of those guys, and you get to the wide receivers, you feel really confident about it. As Mark Mathers, M&M, will come out and introduce the draft here in Detroit. Some fun commercials with Roger Goodell leading up to it as well. And then you say trading back, Tommy, maybe you go with Fisk, with Bishop, Pearsall, Wilson, Worthy, Mitchell. Right. Melton is another good one there. Kool-Aid, by the way. And I see. So you're saying at least land 2 of those players. If you're talking about the trade back, obviously. So it does become interesting, man, because if we want to believe that JJ McCarthy has hype and it's not attached to the New York Football Giants, maybe it's attached to the Minnesota Vikings, 11-23. Well, now I get to talk about Thompson Jr. I get to talk about maybe one of the top cornerbacks. Cooley was brought in for a top 30 visit with the New York Football Giants. He's in that range of targets. Maybe he's the trade up to get inside of that first round. I think listed around 29th overall on the board, right? So there's going to be a lot of options here. And the nice part is we'll have the first 6 picks, Giants included, and then we'll go ahead and sweat. Then we'll have an opportunity to sweat it from here until, getting towards the 20s. We'll see if those trades start to happen. Expectations to me are, as you're getting some of the Detroit alum here for the Lions coming out. There you go. There's Megatron making an appearance. Good for him. Exactly what you want. Celebrate one of the all-time greats. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here for the New York Football Giants. There comes Barry Sanders bringing out the gate here. Hutchinson, I believe, led the charge here. Obviously, current line. Michigan product. And the Detroit Lions, why don't they take J.J. McCarthy? Keep everybody in-house. Keep everybody in town, right? But bottom line being, it's going to be really interesting to see how the top of the draft unfolds here. Starting at 3, looks like it's becoming less interesting as far as the quarterback and it being Drake Maye going to the Patriots. Maybe it gets more exciting at 4 if you get any buzz around Arizona. They feel like they want Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Amon-Ra St. Brown gets going to the new $160 million man, $120 million man, 4-year, 120, 30 million a year. Gosh, if I had been 2 feet taller and a lot more muscular and a lot faster and a lot more athletic, could have been me. Could have been me. Instead, I podcast with you, fine friends. We cover the NFL draft. It's about to get underway, officially kicking things off here. Step away for just a brief moment. Let's grab ourselves a beverage. Let's come back in and let's see if the assumed first overall pick will obviously be Caleb Williams. Start to get the ball rolling and see what type of buzz we get in and around the New York Football Giants as we move towards the 6th overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. Watching live on YouTube with me, Adam Armbrecht, one half of the OGP1 Giant podcast. Back in just a moment with continued coverage of the draft. And the Chicago Bears are now officially on the clock. So they followed the right order. First phase is underway. Round 1, pick 1. We'll see. How long do they wait? This is always the classic, right? You have to pull back, show the fancy graphics, bells and whistles. There's a part of me that doesn't fully get why they go through this sometimes. When you know that it's going to be a particular player, in this instance, Caleb Williams, I understand that you want the pomp and circumstance to start the draft, but it's okay. They're going over, by the way, 2024 first overall, also DJ Moore, 2023 the first round pick, which was Darnell Wright, 2023 second round pick, which was Tariq Stevenson, the cornerback, and the 2025 second round pick. And that was for first overall pick for the Carolina Panthers, who became Bryce Young, and who is now the guy that we'll speculate on. Was he the right pick? Will he be the right pick? Will he end up rounding into form? Obviously, when you see how things went out in Houston, it just feels like mistakes may have been made 1 year ago. Get a little refresh on ourselves. A little snack later on too. We're gonna work our way through it. Checking in with Tommy here. I think Tommy had some things fired off. There you go. I mean, obviously we know Caleb Williams. We don't need to worry about that. But let's see. I think I don't like this one here. The draft opening is like a WWE. So much Hollywood crap I see. Well, sure, but it's entertaining. I don't personally enjoy. Well, I say I don't enjoy. I don't watch wrestling, but I know plenty of people that get a kick out of it. Why not? If you go and watch Gladiator, why wouldn't you go and watch the WWE? I say have fun with it. Showing off some of the highlights here as we watch some of the work going right now for Caleb Williams, dialing back to 2021 in the Oklahoma days. Take all the time in the world, though. You don't need to rush. Waiting for this one to pop off here, and then we can go ahead and know that we've got exactly what we want in terms of moving this a little bit. You know what I found fascinating too about it? Like, you can sit here and tell me that the Jaden Daniels thing was so fascinating to me. And I know you hear he loves the Raiders, he loves Antonio Pierce, he wants to be a Raider. So why not make it happen? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're Washington, you're not worried about it. You can tell me you don't want to be here. We're going to draft you. We're going to bring you in. We have all these weapons. It's a more of a unique kind of setup in terms of the pieces that are currently in place there. And then once you come in, you start having success, it really doesn't matter, right? You're going to love the team that you're with so long as you're winning football games. But if we're talking about the Patriots and them saying, well, at 3, we're open to it. We know that Jaden Daniels is a different breed. You know, categorically, it feels like, well, it's Caleb Williams, it's Jaden Daniels. There is this gap. There is this question a little bit. The ceiling of a Drake Maye is certainly out there to be speculated on. But if you're going to sit here and you're going to talk about the idea of wanting or not wanting a player, him wanting or not wanting you, if the Raiders were really interested, come on, talk to me. First round pick, was it 13th overall? Okay, now talk to me about next year's draft class. Give me another pick here, right? And this is where I think, for all that a player may not want to go to a particular team, and we've seen it happen before, New York Football Giants, Eli Manning. But when that happens, this is a bit of an indication that, yeah, okay, the Raiders may really like you, and maybe it's just too steep of a price. Okay, fine. But ultimately, what are we talking about? Like, ultimately, like we're not interested in making that big splash and making that big trade. By the way, that goes for the Giants too, from 6 to 3. It goes for the Vikings from 11 and 23 up the board. Any of these instances, it is the price point. You heard Joe Schoen talk about this at his press conference. Yes, you have to have a walkaway price. You can't just say, oh, well, it's a first. Okay, and another first and another first, right? At some point you say, yes, the talent is elite and we want them. But what are we leaving ourselves with if we strip our cupboard bare to go get them, even if it is an elite talent? Now, again, in the instances of yourself, Holmes, you'd look back and say, of course, right? But that's always going to be in the rear view. They're showing some highlights of Jaden Daniels here as well, working through his full field progressions, beautiful outside the hash throw, locking it up with his number 1. So there's always going to be these type of moments early in the draft. But and by the way, man, let's not bury it here. This is in division. We're talking about the 2nd overall pick with Washington. This is going to be, excuse me, don't bump the process here. This is going to be a difficult division to navigate for the New York Football Giants. We brought it up a number of times on the podcast over the last couple of weeks. 6.5. That's the over/under win total. And unlike a team like Washington, who if they get, they go ahead and they draft Jaden Daniels, you say, okay, that sets a new expectation, just like with Chicago, new expectation. when you go and you get Caleb Williams. For the New York Football Giants, even if they took, now Drake Maye would probably be different if they went and got him. I think the timeline for him to play would be a little bit sooner. But if you talked about the Giants getting a JJ McCarthy, and whether you love it or not, there is the word they would say it's not going to be immediate. So the timeline on how soon he gets in and starts and how soon he impacts the team in terms of wins and losses, it may not make a massive difference in terms of over under 6.5 wins in terms of wild card or not making the playoffs. But for Washington, it's going to make a difference. For Chicago, it's going to make a difference. So this division is going to be highly competitive this upcoming season. We all know that. And there's just a real world where the Giants are finishing in the bottom and where the Giants are picking again in the top 10 in next year's draft class. It's a bit of a silver lining if you like the idea of whether it's quarterback now, quarterback later, having that type of confidence that your team, for better or worse, is going to be near the top 10 again. Caleb Williams looks so excited. He's brimming. The pick is in. He seems quite relaxed. Chicago Bears, they're elated. They did it. They're looking around the room. Only thing I will say about first overall picks, even second overall picks, when it's just consensus of knowing what the order is going to be, there really is something to be said about the idea of, like, you're congratulating yourselves. It took you nothing to get here. Listen, you do chance and you feel good about it, but in the end, it took you nothing to get here. You just waited for them to say the clock is now officially starting and the requisite time has passed. Hey, now, come on. The Jay Caleb Show. Thank you very much, man. Greatly appreciated. I could not be more ecstatic that you would support us in that way. Really appreciate it, man. Appreciate the kind words. Let's connect on the back end of draft coverage and start to talk about getting on together and doing some good content, because that's what it's about, man. This is the goal here is about connecting with people and hopefully bringing over. Oh, that went down there. Keep that up there for a minute. And hopefully bringing a good time and good vibes. It was Caleb Williams. Officially, the pick is in. Caleb Williams is a Chicago Bear. Shout out once again to Jay Caleb. Now, Caleb Williams, Jay Caleb. There's a little bit something going on there. Appreciate you though, man, and appreciate the support here. Yeah, that's right, Jay Reddy. Shock and awe. We can't believe it. We've got, of course, Caleb Williams, first overall going to Chicago. No surprises here. I do respect, by the way, that when it was leading up to it, he was getting interviewed on the red carpet and all the pomp and circumstance that goes on with this. He said, "Oh, so it's presumed you're going to go to Chicago." He goes, "Well, we'll see." You got to do the dance. You got to do the dance. And now Roger Goodell, who apparently recently had back surgery, is going to have to give warm embraces to all these young gentlemen who come out here. Congratulations, obviously, to Caleb Williams, number 1 overall pick, 2024 draft class, USC quarterback, and he will be the man under center calling the signals for Chicago, who hopefully believe that moving on from Justin Fields, that going in this direction here is exactly why they are going to be competitive in that NFC North, be pushing right with Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. We don't know what's going to happen yet with the Minnesota Vikings. That's going to be a competitive division, and you're going to have a potential, depending on what Minnesota does. A lot of young quarterbacks are going to be in there as well. Detroit, Jared Goff is going to be the elder statesman. So that's going to be fun. It was already this past year, especially when the Packers came on late, especially with Jordan Love, who, by the way, shame on me. I spent when in his draft class coming out of it, I said, I really like this guy. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be able to show some things. He finally gets the chance to. Aaron Rodgers is gone, and I waver. As it's unfolding, I waver and I say, maybe he's not the guy. And then wouldn't you know it, he turns right around and does exactly what I thought he'd be capable of, turns it on late, really starts to show that Green Bay has found a quality QB under center for themselves as well. So Caleb Williams there, a little under 6 minutes on the clock here for Washington, the number 2 overall pick. Let's update our scrolling board, get Williams officially in there at number 1 as we work our way towards Big Blue. Just a momentary pause in the commentary, but the visual, you're going to see me just clacking away right here as we cover the New York Football Giants heading towards the 6th overall pick. Like magic. We did it. We did it. As Caleb Williams talks about learning all of his teammates' names, getting in there, obviously getting to work, right? I mean, one of the things that I've done when it comes to covering the Brooklyn Nets for Locked On with Doug Norrie, covering the New York Football Giants with Eddie, which I try my best. And there's games and there's seasons when you come out of it and you go, hey, player X, player Y, it's just not good enough. There are times when someone, Kadarius Toney, rubs you the wrong way off the field, on the field, social media, and you want to take a jab or you want to, beat up on somebody sometimes when it feels like they've run afoul. Ultimately, for me, as they highlight Trubisky second overall in 2017, don't forget 11th overall 2021, man, the Justin Fields train pulled into the station, pulled out, and violently crashed into the ravine quickly here in Chicago before moving on ultimately to Williams. But this is a great night for everybody. You want everyone to be successful. I want every player. Yes, even Jaden Daniels. I want him to have a great career. Do I want him to struggle if he goes under center for Washington and plays the Giants 2 times a year? Yeah. I want 2 losses each year to be against the New York Football Giants. And then I want him to lose the games required for us to make the playoffs. But, this is such an exciting moment for all these young players. I covered the NBA draft at Barclays Center 2023. You get a chance to talk to these prospects, to talk to these young men. They're all 19, 20, 21 years old. This is a massive step in their journey at the NBA level. In the NFL, a little bit older, certainly, but it's just a really awesome time for everybody. So it's just a big congratulations, not only to Williams, but we'll be saying about that at every single player that gets drafted here along the way. That being the case, we get back in, checking in on the comments here. Anybody go ahead. And by the way, throw it in here because we did this over on YouTube. Had some great questions in there, great comments about what everyone's anticipating. Do you believe that it's going to be Giants staying at 6? Are they going to make that move to get up the board? Let's find out, right? Certainly an opportunity here, the New York Football Giants, to make some noise. 250 on the clock for Washington. So we're going to get to that place where maybe we hear the buzz, maybe we hear the rumors. The Giants are trying. They're trying to get up the clock here. Are they capable of doing it? That's the real question. Big graphics, too. Just such a actually, they got some nice engines. That's a part of their big show there as they zoom in on the arena. Anybody in the crowd ever attended a live draft? I have not. I've not done it. They used to do it, obviously. They've held it closer to the East Coast over the years. Now they're moving it around. But I'm curious if anyone's actually attended one live. You had Vegas the one year, Detroit this year. Was it last year? Was Vegas? Interesting, though. I'm curious to see. Commanders, the pick is in. So we know it's going to be a big one. Jaden Daniels, who in his pre-draft interview said, I'm wearing the shades. Why? So no one will know if I get a little teary-eyed when I finally get drafted. I hear my name called and the pick goes in. Now, this is going to be bittersweet. At least from the way that the lead up to the draft was, did not want to go to Washington necessarily. Couldn't get anyone maybe to bite on trade out or otherwise. So it looks like, unless we get the first shock of the draft and they choose to go Washington, Drake Maye here, which then would put Daniels right into the lap of New England. I would run to draft him at that point. We'll see. Got to wait and see what happens here as Mel Kiper, Booger, talking it up here a little bit. Now clock already counting down under 9-minute mark here for the New England Patriots coming up. The waiting is the hardest part. Reminder to everybody, 2 things. One, that we'll be in live tomorrow morning, breaking it down, talking about how we look forward for the New York Football Giants based on what happens here in round number 1. And then we'll go ahead and talk about our 2 sponsors, not only Pietential, Pietential, Pietential.com, where you can go over free for individual users, online assessment tool, basically a check-in on your well-being. You go ahead and set benchmarks to yourself. There's tools for you to improve over time and track your progress. And then also, of course, Personam, as we know, remains an online AI-driven cyber threat detection engine. Personam improves your vision into your network security environment and allows you to see cyber threats that other tools and platforms just cannot do. Personam is always vigilant, always learning. And what we are learning is that Jaden Daniels is going to the Washington Commanders. Looks like he's giving his mom a big hug in the green room there before he heads out. So whatever the speculation was, whatever he was hoping to push for, doesn't matter. We move on. BJ Reddy in the comments. Is Nick Saban wearing a wig? Just wondering. Well, that's neither here nor there. We don't need to worry about that. I'm currently on, let's see, I'm watching on a couple of different ways here. So if I went back, would I be able to get? I'm trying to check in to see if I could watch it with a Nick Saban coverage. I think I'm on Nick Saban coverage. I haven't seen him pop back on here. He probably is. Little rug. Little rug. Little rug is Jaden Daniels, only FBS QB with 12,000 plus passing yards and 3,000 rushing yards to go along with it. You hate to say it. Congratulations to Jaden Daniels, obviously. Puts on the hat. It looks more like a college Washington W than it does a W for the Washington Commanders, but I do believe he's going pro. So Jaden Daniels, hey, listen, whatever he said about where he wants to be or not, that kid looks absolutely elated to be a member of the Washington Commanders. Hopefully, it's a successful career that never impacts the New York Football Giants on a game-to-game basis over the next decade plus. Also, are the rumors inside the division about what's going on with Dak Prescott, extension. Are they going to get him maybe on the move here at some point? It's going to be big dollars, obviously, associated with it, as we see some highlights here from Daniels going back to his college days. Arizona State, 2019 to 2021, dropping one over the top. Again, talk about QB prospects. One of the things when we talk about J.J. McCarthy and why some people question it is outside the hash throws deep down the field. That's the big part of it. Scrambling, obviously, for Jaden Daniels, a massive ability to go ahead and dial up some of those explosive plays, those off-script plays, right? But when he stays inside the pocket and delivers, take a big hit, drops it right in the bucket here as we're watching some of those highlights going back now to LSU. Great job. Light on his feet, manipulates the pocket, finds those receivers. Big thing, even going back to Caleb Williams here as well. I'm always reminded, and we talk about this a lot, when you find those guys in the mid-rounds of the draft because they don't play at big major schools, one of the things you think about, and this is why it matters when you talk QBs, hey, I need to have the pieces around the quarterback I'm bringing in. Because the college level, when you play at LSU, when you play at Alabama, when you play at the major schools, you've got elite weapons. You've got all the best players in the country, among the best players in the country, come to play for you. That's not always going to be the case at the NFL level. So making sure you're in the right position when you go and draft that QB really matters. But Jaden Daniels, I'd say pretty elite talent, pretty I'm going to say system proof just in terms of drafting a player this high in the draft, feeling confident about it. Respect to the Commanders draft watch party who has the pig right there, full front and center, rocking out with some of the fans there in the DC area as well. Pat staying put. That's the assumption here. Patriots pick is in, so we don't have to assume anymore as it kind of down in the background there. The pick is in. Is it Drake Maye? After all of the huffle and kerfuffle, is it Drake Maye? And if so, the big question then becomes, why were there even the rumors that the Giants were trying to trade up or that the Vikings were trying to trade up? Why have the speculation around it? If you're the New England Patriots, I wouldn't ever open the door for that conversation if I felt like I really was excited to draft Drake Maye and I wanted to put that out there. Again, you're not going to telegraph it, but we knew it about Caleb Williams. We knew it about Jaden Daniels. So why even have that? Because now you bring in a prospect and listen, Drake Maye's not going to care. I'm going pro. I'm going to a somewhat historic franchise, at least over the last 20 years, at least over the Bill Belichick and the Tom Brady era. Yes, it's a new era now. But that means there's a little seed of doubt here about you, right? There was a world where, hey, if we went ahead and we didn't draft you, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Commanders would have felt like they really missed an opportunity if all of a sudden the clock ran out and didn't get Jaden Daniels card in time, just like with Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. So confidence level starts to slide a little bit as you move down the draft board. It's fascinating to hear those very brief but very bubbly rumors when it came to the New England Patriots. Hearing now, too, as we're hearing Adam Schefter report, zero chance the Patriots were going to move out. They were going to go with their guy. You're looking around the room. Kraft is there. They seem comfortable. No celebrations, no big handshakes. So a little, we didn't get quite what we got from some of these other ones. They're showing, obviously, Drake Maye, North Carolina quarterback, in the waiting room here. Now the second question becomes, or the fifth question. I don't know how many questions we've asked so far. Now the next question here becomes for the New York Football Giants. Was it real? Was there real fire to the smoke of we are trying to trade up? We want Drake Maye. If we can get there, we will get there, but we have a price point that we will not go over. Are they sitting there and saying, we did like JJ McCarthy, we did go through that process with him, and we're happy that we look at this and say, okay, could there be a team that's going to try to trade up? Maybe. But the other way this looks is a Michael Penix Jr. who's coming up the board. Do the Vikings feel like, can we just wait for him to get to 11? Does Denver feel like if we want a Penix Jr., do we have to come up? Again, the JJ McCarthy conversation comes in here, the Bo Nix conversation, but that's going back in the first round. So everybody's going to be having these moves. Drake Maye is officially the new franchise quarterback for the New England Patriots. He's going to shake hands in the green room. He's going to make his way to the stage. And now we're going to have Arizona on the clock. Again, not dissimilarly, another team here, a quarterback, but we're talking about another team in the Arizona Cardinals that feels fairly cemented with it having always been speculated, Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, the one thing I do find interesting, you go over to NFL.com, Malik Nabers, is the number one rated prospect by grade, followed by Marvin Harrison Jr., followed by Rome Odunze. Is there any chance Cardinals, who on the clock or pick isn't? No, still on the clock for them. Is there any chance that they would flip from what felt like presumed, hey, we're going to be taking Marvin Harrison Jr., we're going to love it, we're never going to look back? What if they came up and said, Nabers is the pick for us? Would that inspire anything different? Chargers, they need wide receiver help as well. Obviously moved on from multiple veterans this past offseason, or this offseason, I should say. What does that mean for them? They also need offensive line help. Would any team want to come up for a wide receiver? If not, then it becomes tricky, because if you want to come for a quarterback and Arizona is not willing to move out, if you want to come for a quarterback and the Chargers are elated, whether it is Malik Nabers or it is Marvin Harrison Jr. or it is an offensive line, whatever the case may be, but if they're elated with who they have available to them there, then it's going to be hard for any team to come get them. You're going to have to really sell them to move up the board. Other thing to watch here as we count down, coming up on 540 for Arizona. Assume Arizona goes wide receiver. Assume it's Marvin Harrison Jr. Okay, fine. As they show Myers Park High School, North Carolina. Drake Maye, by the way, said he had never left North Carolina. Grew up there, stayed there, played there. And this isn't a knock on him. It's just, hey, then you go to the big major market, right? To go to a place like New York. I'm not knocking it. I think New England is a great spot for him, and I think you're going to see him really blossom. And by the way, if you're a Giants fan and you want a Drake Maye, don't start the narrative about, oh, why didn't the Giants go get him? You can't trade with somebody who doesn't want to trade. So while they may have floated out the idea, it doesn't seem like either one of two things. Anything substantial came up, which could have been this and multiple more first-round picks, or they ultimately just wanted to kind of gauge the market and felt really comfortable staying with Drake Maye. If it's Marvin Harrison Jr., the other one that happened here, we talked about it this morning, betting odds. All of a sudden, CJ Latham came rushing up the board, overtaking Joe Alt by many projections. Is he going to be the next most likely player to come off the board here when we get to the fifth pick and we talk about the Chargers? If the Chargers want a weapon and they can get a weapon, there's just this world where exactly what maybe our two top priorities, we would say, from a One Giant Podcast standpoint, come to fruition. We're talking about Rome Odunze being there. We're talking about JJ McCarthy being there. And you get no clear sentiment around how I feel about JJ McCarthy and how they value the wide receiver position, how they value Rome Odunze. Could be Malik Nabers, obviously, as well. Got to see how it plays out here. It does get a little bit more interesting when we come up to that fifth pick, even though it's felt like offensive lineman has been ahead of wide receiver for the Chargers. New coach, right? Want to revamp things, want to get Herbert back on track. Going to be fascinating, though. Interesting to see how it shakes out. For the New York Giants, the second that they make that pick, you immediately start to think about what's going to come next year. Will the Cards trade out? Yeah, this is coming down to the wire and talking about looking for offensive playmakers as you're seeing Adam Schefter report on it. The pick is now officially in. A shakeup here would be not it not being a wide receiver, but it not being Marvin Harrison Jr. That's just been the consensus for so long. It feels like that would be shocking. They're showing Marvin Harrison Jr. in the green room right now, having a little bit of Kyler Murray, bombing him out to Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah, it feels like a natural fit. It feels perfect. What if they flip the script and go with Malik Nabers? That would be the one way this gets really crazy, at least from a player availability standpoint. I don't think it's going to be the case. I think we're talking probably about Marvin Harrison Jr., and then we're talking about the Chargers being on the clock. They are showing Malik Nabers, though, now as well. It would seem counterintuitive that Harbaugh coming in isn't going to want to do the things to solidify around Justin Herbert. That's why you hear offensive lines significantly. And yet, I do just have this little, there's just like little pause in me that just thinks, right. And even though it is a deep class at wide receiver, so you feel like there'll always be another opportunity to do that if you're the Chargers. You just don't you get a little bit starry-eyed when you look at Marvin Harrison Jr., when you look at Malik Nabers, Rome Odunze from our standpoint as well. When you see those wide receivers, you have to at least take a minute and go, well, these are elite weapons that, yes, in theory, we can go get another guy. But does it cost us our third-round pick along with our second to move marginally up the board? Let's see where we go with the Arizona Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr., as expected for the Arizona Cardinals. So nothing has gone off script here early in the draft. Caleb Williams overall, Daniels to Washington, Maye to the Patriots. So 3 franchises getting their new franchise quarterbacks. And now a team that, hey, had injuries with Kyler Murray, but he came back, showed that he still can be elite level talent, certainly for the Arizona Cardinals. Go get him the weapon. Don't mess around. Go get him the weapon. So Marvin Harrison Jr. in, and now already coming down on 7:30 to go for the LA Chargers. So far, you'd say it's gone according to script here. Take a beat as I'll go ahead and update as I've fallen completely behind on our ticker and the early draft picks here, waiting to see what will happen with LA. Rolling right along, man. Rolling right along. You see him going up there, see him high pointing, seeing him playing aggressive, knowing the pedigree. Anytime you're trying to decide between what, Malik Nabers, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, and I'm not saying it was a debate for the Cardinals, but anytime you are having that debate, it never hurts that you had that his father played and was one of the best, as they're going to show some side-by-side comparisons here. And it's really not, because Harrison Jr. is such a bigger receiver than his father was. But as they show Peyton down the sideline, toe tapping to Harrison Sr., eyeballing, high pointing that ball, watching it all the way in, over the top, elite hands, right? Great feet placement as they're showing it here. Now, I won't be surprised. Show me the highlight of Harrison Jr. now, over the shoulder, right side down the sideline, watching these highlights. Well, guess what? Strikingly similar, even though I say that Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, is a bigger player, is going to play a little bit bigger, is going to be even more of a red zone threat, as opposed to just is a wrong word, as opposed to his father, who had a different kind of skill set. Have to love it, though. They're showing these highlights. Now they're getting down to that red zone, talking about one-handed grabs, pulling it in, again, toe tapping right on the edge of the sideline against the New England Patriots, focusing in on the body control of Marvin Harrison Sr. And now let's go ahead and run it back, right? There it is. This little scoop catch that Marvin Harrison Jr. had near the left pylon against Michigan State. And it's just the same thing about able to adjust to the ball in flight, to be able to have focus, concentration, bring it in, and execute the play, right? So nice job there. Cardinals get their wide receiver pair with their franchise quarterback. So all these teams got to make these tandems. Counting down here with the Chargers, we did say one of the things we were interested about, best available for Mel Kiper right now is Rome Odunze, by the way. So I mean, like, we love Rome Odunze. Then he has second is Malik Nabers. Then we're going to be talking about Brock Bowers for him, tight end out of Georgia, in terms of best available on Mel Kiper's big board. I don't love seeing that Rome Odunze is the best available. I would hate to find out that the Chargers take Rome Odunze here and that he is the consensus player, maybe inside of NFL circles, a little bit over top of Nabers. Either way, elite talents for any of these teams here at the top. But boy, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here with the Chargers. Nothing surprising so far to this point. Haven't heard anything either as well as far as trade ups go. We're just getting the standard 3 quarterbacks, 1, 2, 3. We've now got the wide receiver coming off at 4. We've got now, and by the way, by ESPN standard, not Mel Kiper's, the best available would be Malik Nabers. The best fit would be Alt. So you have to really obviously like that when you're taking a look at the upcoming picks here, right? So we'll get that same exact scenario of the New York Football Giants. And whether it's by the standards of Mel Kiper, ESPN, fit versus best available is always a fun one for me. Because, by the way, they took it away there, so we won't be able to see that one. They actually had it listed there when we were talking about the fit versus best available versus fit. It looked a little bit different for every team along the way here, right? So Marvin Harrison Jr. in, Chargers up. Malik Nabers would be the best available by ESPN. The best fit would be Joe Alt, offensive lineman. Overall ranking, by the way, was 4th for Joe Alt, 3rd for Malik Nabers. So you've gone a little bit out of order here in terms of Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and whether or not it was Drake Maye is really the one. I think 6th overall we had him listed at on the big board. So not going to be crazy, but idea would be we'll bring back in not only the Jay Caleb show, Chargers not trading. I don't believe that they will either. 2:37 on their clock. And the one wrinkle here, I'll just throw it out whether or not they're doing it. I think we talked about this morning as well. And I'll just say again here too. What was this? Oh, pet trade pick. Yeah, that there too. Yeah. You know what one of the things too is just from a little broadcasting standpoint, I'm going to remind everybody and remind myself, Jay Caleb, really appreciate supporting the show. Genuinely appreciate that. One of the things I don't do, I used to do this with the NBA draft. So I used to do it with the NFL draft. I try not to track over on X or over on social because it just takes away a little bit of the joy of watching it count down, of seeing where it goes, and understanding that when, the news kind of breaks live on TV, I want to catch that with everybody. So you're getting my real-time reactions here, even if Adam Schefter might be doing a little bit of the dirty work on the side. Coming down on 140 to go on the 5th overall pick. The one thing I was going to mention was, if you got to the point, and right now, like, even though you can say the Chargers aren't going to ultimately trade, that's fine. But the one version of this they're at least talking about is if they like Joe Alt as the pick is now in, so they're going to stay. The one thing we wondered about would have been, okay, teams, not only teams calling for quarterback, but maybe the Giants just saying, if they wanted the quarterback to say, okay, we'll come up one spot with you just to make sure that we secure the UB and don't have one of these other teams. And then if you're the Chargers, you get to sit there at 6 and still get your offensive lineman, still get your wide receiver, still make whatever choice you want to make. And they might be able to do it again, maybe potentially with the Titans, right, at 7 and say, okay, maybe there's another opportunity for us here. But they don't mess around. The pick is going to be in for them. And then guess what? Not then, now. The New York Football Giants are on the clock. All indications would be it's going to be Malik Nabers. That has been the somewhat consensus here. Our pick for OGP was Rome Odunze. I also felt and feel like if JJ McCarthy is going to be there for them, there's enough connection to say that that's fine. That works for me. And I don't think, from a fan perspective, you should not be dissuaded by the idea the Giants talked about trying to get Maye, that they talked about whether or not J.J. McCarthy is worth the 6th overall pick. You even heard the little rumblings. Well, maybe Penix Jr., they'll take him at 6th overall if they like him that much. Don't be discouraged about all the smoke around it. Once they make their pick, that's the player. He's a part of the franchise, and let's get excited about what he's going to do for Big Blue. And I don't be discouraged if it's J.J. McCarthy and you were a Drake Maye or bust guy, or if you were a Rome Odunze fan and it's J.J. McCarthy. Hey, okay, there's going to be a deep wide receiver class here, going to be opportunities to bring in additional talent. So let's take it in stride. By the way, step away after the Giants make that initial 6th overall pick. They turned away trade offers for Justin Herbert as well, interestingly enough. That's the note coming in from Adam Schefter here. So maybe they're saying, hey, you just came, Harbaugh, from Michigan. JJ, he's your boy. How about it? We'll go ahead and give you a haul, and you reset that franchise in totality. If you're Harbaugh, you love JJ McCarthy. but you have to really love, and I believe going back to his draft, Harbaugh did love Justin Herbert as a prospect. So you feel like you've come to a great position with a well-established quarterback, and now it's about making him better, whether that's with a weapon or whether that's with a lineman in front of him. Let's see as Kel gives the pick here. Joe Alt. So after all of that, after Latham, after all the speculation, offensive lineman is the pick. Joe Alt is the pick. Pretty much staying on script. Reaction from Joe Alt? He doesn't seem to be interested. Is there a delay on his reaction? I'm assuming there was a delay there because otherwise it doesn't look like he's terribly excited to be a member of the LA Chargers. Giants are on the clock, already down under 7 minutes and counting here. So everything's at their disposal. Malik Nabers is available for them. JJ McCarthy is available for them. Odunze is available for them. And in theory, so too is a trade down opportunity for them. If you're looking inside this draft class and if you're sitting there saying, is now the Giants are on the clock, best available by ESPN is Malik Nabers. The best fit is JJ McCarthy. And then you know our opinion. Odunze, just an elite talent. Either way, quality pick coming in here for the Giants. The trade down possibility here, right? By ESPN's big board, by the way, the sixth best available player now is Quinyon Mitchell. So you're talking about going through Malik Nabers, Dallas Turner, Odunze, JJ McCarthy, and then you start to get into some of those defensive talents that we've talked about, whether it's Quinyon Mitchell, whether it's Arnold out of Alabama, whether it's Latu out of UCLA, right? Talking about multiple defensive players, secondary edge rushers that are going to be in there. Then you get to Brock Bowers, right back in, though, with Brian Murphy before you get to Fatanu, who's going to be there as well. 10th best available player right now. There they go. Okay, they get back to Minnesota. Joe Alt's officially the pick at 5th overall. The delay on the video feed, it makes it look like he was discussed. It turns out he's elated. Congratulations to Joe Alt, 2023 unanimous All-American tackle out of Notre Dame. So the trade down possibilities here. Does somebody want JJ McCarthy? And is it not the New York Football Giants? 11-23 from the Vikings, right? Is there an opportunity for the trade down with the Broncos? Speculate. Patrick Surtain, 12th overall, a first-round pick next year. Are any of these teams that hyped to get JJ McCarthy? They're willing to come up. And what is the floor, I should say, not the ceiling. What is the floor for the New York Football Giants and Joe Schoen to say it's worth trading down? There's a very fine line here. I wouldn't say. So if you traded out of this selection, one thing it would do if it was for a quarterback for another team, it would bump down the hierarchy. So you'd still have Nabers available. You'd still have Odunze available as well. But when you go back to it and the pick is in, so the Giants are not trading back, they're staying right there with it. Won't matter if anybody is going to be making offers or trades or anything else. It'll move it on to the Tennessee Titans at 7. New York Football Giants. Listen, in the background here, we're going to go ahead and do it. Let's crank this thing. We'll hear it together as Goodell will come to the podium. When he gets there, we'll go ahead and crank it up and let you listen in together as we hear the New York Football Giants. Most likely, odds on Malik Nabers, QB JJ McCarthy there. Our pick. Reporting as much as they like JJ from Adam Schefter, as much as they like JJ McCarthy, leaning more wide receiver, getting the elite weapon, hopefully trying to make the best version of this current roster. Big note here, as soon as this happens, couple of things. Coming back in for a quarterback, if it is a wide receiver, it's going to be the first round discussion. Other part of this, if it's wide receiver, I think the conversation around Darius Slayton becomes interesting. What is going to happen with him? He wanted to renegotiate his contract, get an extension. If you get the elite number one, you have Jalen Hyde, and you have Wan'Dale Robinson, now I think you can turn your attention and say, hey, maybe we go ahead and have the conversation about moving on from him, whether it's even just for a 4th round pick or something. That's going to allow you to get an offensive lineman later in the draft. It's going to allow you to invest in Spencer Rattler if you want to go that route later in the draft. So there are some dominoes to fall here for New York Football Giants, and we'll talk about that. They're showing Malik Nabers in the green room. They're showing JJ McCarthy back home in Michigan with his family. So 23, unanimous All-American. A lot of guys at the top of the draft are unanimous All-Americans. You have to appreciate that. Mel Kiper reminding everybody, if you don't have a wide receiver, your QB has no shot. That is true. So you get this guy in place here if it's wide receiver, and like you give yourself an elite talent for whoever's under center this year, whether it's Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, right? Or going to next year as well. Here we go. Crank it. Malik Nabers is the pick. Not shocking, not surprising here for the New York Football Giants. This is expectations based on everything that we've heard leading up to it. We believed in Rome Odunze. We really liked him as a player, but Malik Nabers, an absolutely electric talent. This is a guy that can take the top off of defenses, is going to be a dynamic playmaker within their system. It's going to look different than what we were talking about for the New York Football Giants if you're thinking Rome Odunze, but there is nothing to not love about the pick here. Malik Nabers making his way up. He'll throw on the New York Football Giants hat, and we'll get an opportunity to talk a little in depth about Malik Nabers, talk about being a guy that can do a lot of different things, lined up out of the slot and absolutely dominated at LSU. It doesn't mean he's not a movable chess piece as well. You're going to show him here if you're watching on ESPN, watching that inside slot route, just a little double move inside out over the top, wide open, right into the bucket there out of LSU. Watching those throws from Jaden Daniels, obviously, again, lining up in the slot, go ahead, little stutter step, go ahead and dip shoulder, get to the pylon, great body control in the air, elevated, brings it down. Again, highlighting another slot route play here, lines up, goes ahead, pop and fake. And then, unlike the previous play, if you watch, he goes ahead and gives that little deke inside, but rather than pull it all the way back out, he keeps that stem inside on the vertical route. There you go, doing a nice job dipping the shoulders, thinking that you're going to go ahead and have a guy breaking his route set up on a comeback. Instead, goes ahead and explodes outside. Again, this time breaking down that route, coming back. And then it's the run after catch here. Here's a guy that took the ball from outside the hash on the left side, even though an extra 5 yards, brought it all the way back across the field. Nice job, really in tight spaces, does an elite job of keeping defenders away from him, not allowing them to get their hands on him. Malik Nabers, LSU wide receiver, in the door for the New York Football Giants. And now talk about comparing him to who? Hey, listen, I'll take it. Jamar Chase. Gotta like it. You think about what Jamar Chase was capable of doing in his college career and now his pro career. Now it's going to be about Malik Nabers. And, of course, start the conversation. Odell Beckham Jr., right? Odell Beckham Jr., that's the guy you're going to draw the comp to. I don't think they're the same type of wide receiver, just LSU products. So that is the 6th overall pick for the New York Football Giants. The draft is in the books, at least for the first round as of right now. The next thing we'll think about is where do they go from here? Will there be talk about getting back into the back end of the first round for a quarterback? And now also it's the conversation about J.J. McCarthy. You now enter the phase here of this draft, just if we're keeping an eye on that narrative, we're talking about a player in J.J. McCarthy. You can say that Michael Penix Jr. maybe gets into this as well. But now you're talking about what teams to come up next. Because now it's the Tennessee Titans. Then it's going to be the Atlanta Falcons. Then you're going to start to move down this list here as far as draft order and start to really have to wonder. Atlanta, Chicago, then you get down to the Jets. That's not likely, although maybe heir apparent. So big. Joe Schoen, very happy. Brian Dable, very happy. Tish Mara, very happy. So nice job by that side of their green room. And then you get down to the Vikings. Maybe JJ, all of the talk about the Minnesota Vikings got into the first round for a second time so they could turn around and be able to go get their quarterback. Well, they might be able to sit there at 11, take JJ McCarthy, and then at 23, who knows? Maybe Thomas Jr. is available. Let's just listen in real quick here for a moment. Make sure we get ourselves off mute here. Nice job by Malik Nabers. Inside of his jacket is all the people that have helped him along the way, some of the big moments from his collegiate career. So Malik Nabers is officially a New York Football Giant. Put it in the books, man. An elite weapon, a first-round talent. So now we talk about what's going to happen here going forward. Will the Giants try to come back in to get their quarterback? Is there someone in this draft that they like, or will we simply see this become building out the roster? Whether or not we had our thoughts on where we wanted the Giants to go to wide receiver position, what we did believe in was that The best way to do it is to build out the roster and then drop the quarterback into it. So maybe they will end up drafting a quarterback. I don't know. When you look at the ages of some of these guys, and Penix Jr., the talent is worth it, but 24 years old for Spencer Rattler, Bo Nix. We've gone over how older quarterbacks don't have a ton of success necessarily at the NFL level. But even if you take that or not, 47, 70, where do you go from here? How do you continue to build out this roster? Guys, remember the top 30 visits. Before we take a step away here, and we'll obviously break back in if we see anything that pertains to the New York Football Giants. Guys to think about. Less likely, I think, as you get towards the second round, the Giants come in for a guy like Kool-Aid McKinstry, who's projected to still go at the back end of the first round. Jordan Morgan seems like he's sneaking into the first round as well, offensive lineman. They had Mason Smith in top 30 visit, 49th overall on ESPN's big board. That starts to hit the mark. We talked about a defensive front. That's an aggressive, stalwart position of this team, going to be a strength of the defense. Go ahead and do it, right? You turn around, you think about Jaden Hicks, 59 overall, the safety. Really like him. Have my eye on him a long time. Talk about Cooper Beebe, 78th overall. Andrew Phillips, cornerback out of Kentucky, 88th. Tight end, Benson Sano out of Kansas State, 93rd. So, 47th, 70th, 107, 166. Are the Giants going to move around this board at all? We'll have to wait and see what they end up choosing to do. I'm going to take a big step away for a moment, get myself a beverage, maybe a bite to eat. Keep an eye on things in the background here. If nothing really breaks, at least over the next 15 picks, I'll most likely come back in, round out the conversation with you all, and then step away with the expectation we'll come back in tomorrow morning and break down what the Giants are going to do going forward. But also keep in mind, as Tennessee Titans pick comes in here, still a chance the Giants are going to make some noise inside of this round. Get over on X at Adam Armbrecht, at AMAC214 for Andy, One Giant Podcast. Move back in here, wrapping things up, talking about what this means for the Giants this season. If it stands as it is, Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, now with that elite weapon of Malik Nabers. We'll talk inside Big Blue's roster when we come back in 2024 NFL Draft. All right, we're going to go ahead and actually step away as we roll over the hour. New York Football Giants, Malik Nabers the pick. We'll talk about what it means for Daniel Jones, expectations for this season, a narrative that I put out there a couple of weeks ago saying, hey, once they take that wide receiver, if they don't get that quarterback, especially early in the draft, the next conversation is going to be, what are we talking about as the Titans went with Latham, offensive tackle, just so you know, and the pick is in for the Falcons. But, what does it mean? We're going to go down to this season and have it be, Daniel Jones finally has his elite number one wide receiver. So expect those conversations to come. I'll be back in later tonight, tomorrow morning. Be sure to follow us on all those platforms. New York Football Giants, Malik Nabers is the pick. We'll be back in soon, continuing to break down and setting the table for the future rounds of the weekend, all things New York Football Giants.